First-century Jerusalem during Passover was a city swollen with pilgrims from every corner of the known world. But beneath the festival lay an older crisis. Human rebellion introduced a deep fracture, creating a moral debt so massive no person could pay it. For centuries, the law demanded a response. At Passover, a lamb's blood marked Israel's doors, a temporary measure covering the deficit while waiting for a permanent cure. The ancient sacrificial system required a staggering volume of physical bloodshed. Year after year, innocent life was offered to satisfy the requirements of justice. This creates a profound dilemma. A perfectly just judge must address a world that is entirely guilty, yet deeply loved. The solution to that tension began to unfold in a quiet upper room. In an upper room, away from the crowds, Jesus of Nazareth knelt on the floor. He took a towel and a basin of water, stooping to wash the dirt from the feet of his followers. During the meal, he took bread, broke it, and handed them a cup of wine. He told them to drink, declaring the start of a new covenant. This agreement relied on a different kind of payment. Forgiveness would now be secured through the shedding of his own blood, replacing the endless cycle of animal sacrifices. Jesus was stepping into the place of the guilty. He moved toward the Garden of Gethsemane to accept a sentence that was not his own. Late that night, he crossed the Kidron Valley into a grove of olive trees called Gethsemane. He asked his closest friends to keep watch, and he went further into the shadows to pray alone. The weight of the coming trial was crushing. Under extreme stress, his capillaries began to burst beneath the skin, a condition that caused his sweat to fall to the ground like great drops of blood. The quiet of the garden shattered. Dozens of soldiers and officials stormed through the trees with torches, swords, and clubs, led by a man who had shared his bread only hours before. When Jesus stepped forward and asked who they were looking for, he answered simply, "I am he." At those words, the armed guards drew back and fell to the ground. He commanded his disciples to put down their weapons. He was deliberately surrendering his authority to face the courts on behalf of the world. The religious leaders dragged him through a series of illegal night trials. They sought any testimony that would secure a death sentence, even as the false witnesses continually contradicted one another. Because the council lacked the power to execute, they delivered him to the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. Pilate was a man hardened by the political pressures of ruling Judea. He saw no crime, but he feared a riot. The governor offered the crowd a choice. They demanded freedom for Barabbas, a convicted murderer, and insisted that the innocent man before them be crucified. Roman soldiers took him to be scourged. They used whips weighted with bone and lead to tear his flesh, then pressed a crown of long, sharp thorns into his scalp as a mocking tribute to his kingship. While human laws were being discarded by the courts, the events unfolding followed an ancient, deliberate pattern of redemption. They forced him to carry his own cross through the narrow streets to a place called Golgotha. There, they drove iron spikes through his wrists and feet and lifted him up to die. This was the moment the debt was addressed. Jesus was bearing the weight of human rebellion, shame, and hypocrisy, drinking the cup of judgment to the very bottom. At noon, a supernatural darkness fell over the land for 3 hours. In the final moments of his life, he cried out in absolute agony, my God, why have you forsaken me?" With his final breath, he said, "It is finished." In the markets of the time, this was the word written across a bill once the final coin had been collected. The earth shook, and the thick veil in the temple tore from top to bottom. The barrier between a holy God and humanity was gone. Early on the first day of the week, women approached the garden tomb with burial spices. They found the heavy stone entrance already rolled away. The rolled-away stone invited the women inside to see what remained of the burial preparations. The tomb was empty, and the grave cloths were lying in place. Over the next 40 days, he appeared to his followers. He spoke Mary's name in the garden, ate bread with friends on the road, and invited a doubting Thomas to touch his physical scars. These encounters confirmed that the transaction was complete. The hold of death over humanity had been broken. Before leaving, he gave them a commission that would change history. They were to take the message of forgiveness to every nation, starting in the very city that had rejected him. His departure into the clouds marked the coronation of a king who now reigns over all he redeemed. He promised to be with them always, to the very end of the age. We live in an age of constant accusation, where digital ledgers never forget and mistakes are dragged into the light for the world to judge. We hide ourselves to avoid a shame that feels permanent. The cross declares that you can be fully known, flaws and all, and truly forgiven. The penalty was absorbed, and justice was satisfied. Your value was settled the moment God decided you were worth dying for. At the foot of the cross, the silence reveals a God who would rather die than spend eternity without you.